I'm Charlie Hall. Welcome to Shine in the Darkness. On Christmas Eve 2023, a friend of mine was baptized. About a week ago, Robert and Danny came to the studio to tell Danny's story.
Hey folks, welcome to Shine in the Darkness, and we're going to hear a man's testimony today. Glad you could make it. Want to give a shout out to Charlie. Charlie, would you just say hello so the audience can hear your voice?
Hello!
Okay, that wasn't really him. He has a booming voice. But thanks for making it, and we want to really just get you to meet one of our favorite people in the whole world, Danny Frain, formerly known as Dan Frain. And we're going to introduce you right now to a great friend and brother in Christ. Danny, welcome. Thanks for hanging out with us today.
Well, thank you for the invitation. And I am Danny Frain now, formerly known as Dan Frain, especially in the business world, which I am no longer part of. But this is really my first opportunity to talk about my expanding and restructuring relationship with the Lord, and I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you.
Hey, before we get to dive into that, could you just give us a little snapshot of you? Are you married? Do you have children? What's Danny's life look like?
Oh, okay. Well, I married my high school sweetheart, and so this May we'll be celebrating our 40th wedding anniversary.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. And interestingly, my daughter is, we just found out, is getting married in June.
Her name?
Danielle.
Okay.
And our 40th wedding anniversary has now taken second fiddle to Danielle's wedding, which might upset some other people in their lives, but we thankfully we have the same core values regarding our children, where they come first, and I'd give up anything for those guys. There's three of them.
Two boys.
And two boys and my daughter Danielle.
And your boys' names?
Matthew's the oldest, and Connor is the youngest.
Shout out. And is Matthew the one who just got married?
Matthew's been married now for approximately 2 years.
And his bride's name?
Her name is Jamie.
All right. Hey, Jamie.
Yay.
Shout out.
Hi, Jamie.
All right.
And Connor has a special lady in his life as well, and her name is Brooke. She's from the bluegrass state of Kentucky.
Whoa.
And
love her.
Yes, she's quite a girl, and obviously the future of that relationship is in the hands of the Lord, so I don't have to worry about it in any way, shape, or form, because I have no control over it. So I've learned to I'm learning to let things happen as opposed to make things happen, and
wow.
That was a pretty big change in my life. So
ongoing. That's a struggle.
Yeah.
Hey, so let's wait a second. I also wanted to know, you're one of those few people who have been around this area for a long time, Florida, so transient. How long have you been in Pinellas County?
Well, I moved to Madeira Beach in July of 1976.
From where?
My father is a retired New York City fireman.
All right.
And he got out on disability earlier than he would have had he met his obligation to the city. And they made a quantum leap to Florida that has been rewarding me since the first day, which I remember quite vividly. And an interesting note, he worked in a firehouse in Rockaway Beach, which is in Queens, New York. And he worked with a fellow named Vinnie Brennan, who will re-enter our discussion a little bit later on. So,
Yeah, the name Brennan keeps coming up.
yeah.
So let's go to, so let's see, you would be about 16. So in essence, you've grown up here since 16 years old.
Yes, I have grown up here. I really don't consider myself to be a New Yorker. I am definitely a Floridian.
Apologize to the New Yorkers. We love you.
We do love
Yes,
you because I still have quite a few cousins, and fortunately, my mom's two brothers are still alive. There's, cousins, kids, and there's even cousins, kids. So,
Wow.
yeah. So, and I stay in touch with them. And a lot of them are firemen and policemen, which is just following in the heritage of my parents' family. All four of my grandparents were born in Ireland, and they came over on the boat in the 20s, went through Ellis Island, and so I grew up in an Irish Catholic family, which had incredible rewards, and I really had a wonderful childhood.
Wow, so I'm going to jump forward, and I just want to know, before we talk about Christ, what was life like for you before you met Christ?
Well, I grew up in my home. We had both my parents, always, and I have four brothers and sisters. So there was always a competitive nature, a competitive aura that surrounded the house, especially with my two brothers. And so I was always looking after myself, and just trying to get covered with what I needed to cover, and that kind of fed into who I became as a very competitive person. And once again, there's two sides to every sword, and that became one of the attributes that allowed me to become a successful businessman. But it also brought weaknesses, because I had a very difficult time developing loving relationships with men. And as it turns out, and we'll talk about later, is that my loving relationships with men are turned out to be one of the things that saved my life. And so
were there like bring it into adulthood, and can you give an example of what living life was like before Christ? Because we'll talk about after. And thankfully, thank you, Lord, I am a witness to watching Danny come alive. But what was it like on the average day for you without Christ? Was there a difference at all?
Well, I went to, I was raised Irish Catholic, and I went to Catholic elementary school, and I followed that pattern, and so I always had a relationship with Christ, and all along I felt as though maybe the word is normal relationship with Christ based on the Catholic normal, and I would say I even had a personal relationship with him at that time, but it was quite raw, and because I do remember as a 6-year-old on my receiving my Holy Communion, where I'm kneeling down in the pew, really talking to God, having a discussion with God about my life. But because of my selfish, competitive nature, I was always praying about myself or for myself.
Right.
The idea of having a discussion with God to help other people was something that was just unimaginable. So the good news is that I was talking to him.
Yeah.
The bad news is that I was talking about the wrong person.
Right. Right. Wow, that's a great observation. I better camp on that one for a minute myself.
Yeah.
So, sure, change your prayer life. So, were there any type of struggles you were going through as an adult, or you made obviously some type of shift in your life, maybe not that long ago, and in the last few years? And is there anything that you were walking through life with that you're struggling with that you think of, since maybe they've changed, but daily struggles? Was there anything you can share, because the people who are going to watch this are walking through struggles in their life, and it's so liberating when we hear from other people and their stories. Anything that you can share?
Well, yes, and I do hope to grow personally from this experience that I'm doing right now. But more than anything, I'm hoping and praying that I say something that somebody out there says to themselves, "Wow, I went through exactly the same thing, and now this guy is talking about it in front of people that he doesn't even know." And really, that's my objective, is to say something that resonates with somebody out there, that it might help, And I can say that from when I was a youngster, I never really felt comfortable in my own skin.
Really?
Yes, and what happened is I learned to pretend like I had it together, and I got very, very good at it. And so there's people out there that might see this podcast someday and say, "Wow, I had no idea that was going on." And that insecurity manifested in some other issues later on in my life that, really made things more difficult for me and my family. And addiction is one of them. And mostly drinking, but there were other things that I was addicted to. And some of them seem mostly harmless, but they weren't harmless to me. Food is another one. So when I was anxious, I would always go grab, the bag of potato chips and then, open the bag and throw away the bag, usually within about 5 or 10 minutes, So, but some other serious issues developed as well. And some of those issues are things like, lust and those are really the two biggest things, is that while I stayed allegiant and happily married to my wife, I looked at women in an unhealthy way.
Right.
Although I respected them dearly and I got along with women all my life, there was always a feeling inside of me that when they were not looking in my eyes, I wasn't looking in theirs. And that's something that I'm slowly overcoming.
Right. Yeah.
And it's a miracle. And I'll say that if you look up the word miracle in the dictionary, you'll probably be surprised. But without having Webster here by my side, I'll say that a miracle is a very unexpected event that can only be explained by a supernatural influence. And in my life, a supernatural influence is the supernatural influence is the Holy Trinity, which is God the Father, Jesus the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Well, that's a whole lot to unpack, Danny. But what I want to ask you is because, like, for all of us guys out there, we there's so many things vying for our attention, trying to seduce us into looking the wrong way, from lust to alcohol, drugs, you name it. But so you struggled with self-image, fitting in your own skin, if you will. You turned to some other things. Did they work? Did it help?
Well,
did they satisfy you, in other words? And I don't mean from a physical standpoint, because what I mean is, did they turn up empty, or did they really fill your heart and make you joyful?
Well, it was really both, Robert. Early on, when I was in my 20s, it seemed to work. That investment that I made in my life, which is a one-way road, by the way. It's a one-way street of which you can't make U-turns until you meet the Lord, or until I met the Lord. And I was fortunate in the sense that I was able to work while I was using or drinking heavily, and I was able to stay just one step ahead of disaster. And I don't, looking back on it now, if disaster had occurred back then, it's hard to know how my life would have changed. But I also believe that my life was scripted long before I vacated the womb. And, so it happened just the way it was all supposed to. And now I consider myself to be one of the most blessed men in the history of mankind. But having said that, as time went on, it continued to degrade into a more serious issue. And I have to say that I am quite blessed in the sense that my wife never gave up on me, because she saw me as a young man. We met at 16 or 17 and started dating at 17, and today, 47 years later, we're still best friends. And but it did become an issue. It did become an issue, and it was an issue with not only my wife but also my 3 adult children. I was never violent, and I'd like to think that I wasn't spiritually abusive. I was never physically abusive, but I was absent, is the best way to describe it. I was absent from a lot of opportunities that I had to make a real positive change in their life, a real positive influence in their life. And what resulted was a negative influence in their life. I could almost say that I wish I could go back and change it, but I don't regret things, and I don't hold grudges, and I always look forward to having the best day possible. Even when I was in the throes of alcoholism, I was always trying to have a good day, and that didn't work quite frequently, but it's still the next day I would wake up and think, well, maybe today's going to be a better day than yesterday, So,
Well, so roll that forward. Something changed in your life. Can you tell us about that?
oh, absolutely, yes. It took a while, is the best thing, the best way to describe it. So if there's anybody out there that's listening, that is wondering how it happened in my life, I would say that the change did come, and it was a miracle, and it was a divine intervention. One day, the light just went on, and it was an event. But that event was only made possible by the perseverance of my seeking the Lord and never giving up. And throughout that whole pursuit, I always felt as though I was getting closer and closer and closer. In fact, sometimes I thought I was there, and when it actually occurred, I knew at that point that I had arrived, and at that point is when I became a real child of God.
Can I back up a half a sentence? Because for someone out there who's listening, that had arrived. What does that mean to you? Just in case someone wants to unpack that.
Yeah. What it means to me simply is that the Lord is at the apex of my pyramid. He is the number one interest in my life. He comes before anybody, anything, at any time. And that was the biggest change in my life, because I had loved my family so much, and I was always brought up that way, to love your family, that I could never imagine putting something in front of my family. And maybe that's what really held me back from crossing over into a point in my life when my family became, I don't want to say demoted, but they lost their position as the first thing in my life. Because what happened was I figured out, or the Lord helped me figure out, that without an endearing, honest, personal relationship with God, I could lose everything else. And with a personal relationship with God, I can have everything else.
Wow.
And that's what I have now. I have it all, Robert. And it doesn't matter what happens in my life, good, wrong, or indifferent, positive, negative. I always know that at the end of the day, I can have a conversation with Jesus, and we can discuss what's happened. And it's hard to understand. It's even harder to explain. But for those people out there that are struggling in their spirituality, I encourage you not to give up, because that's how it worked for me. I had so many opportunities to give up, and I kept getting up off the floor when I got knocked down, and he realized eventually that I was a keeper, and I am a keeper, and now we're best buddies, and I wished there was a way to capture and can the feeling that I have in my heart and offer that to somebody else. Because I wouldn't sell it, because I just want to give it to you, so you can have it the way I have it, the way you have it. But it just can't be done that way. I had to find him myself. And when in the dark room that I was in, I was always opening it just a little bit and having this beam of sunlight come through that crack in the door. But I always had my foot up against the door too, as to not let the door fully swing open so I could have the whole thing. And when I opened that whole thing, what it was, and this is the easiest way to put it, was that my faith was stronger than my fear.
Wow.
Prior to that, fear was winning the day.
Right.
When I was just letting that sunlight come in partially. And then one day, my faith got stronger than my fear, and I ripped that door off the hinges.
And was that like the actual time and the day that happened? Like, was that one day and one event, or was this over a period of time that door got ripped off the hinges? Like, is there one mark in time, or was it a little bit of a lapse time that went by?
Good question. It really was a very short, I don't want to call it momentary, because it lasted about an hour. But leading up to that, I really held that door closed, mostly 90% closed, for about 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
Before I was able to pull the door off the hinges. And when it happened, it was spontaneous. And some people are fortunate to have it happen early on in their life. Like, for example, I'm now involved with a children's ministry where the spirituality of some of the children that I deal with, 5th grade boys, is so far beyond where I was just a couple of years ago.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
That's incredible.
It is amazing. And I volunteer, but I get paid so handsomely. Because I get to witness these events with these children and to see the spirituality just flowing out of these young men. And that's my reward. And it's pretty amazing.
Well, Danny, before we cross over into the here and the now and what that looks like, I'm going to bring a name up, a guy named Kevin Brennan. And I understand from what you're leading into, he's a little bit of your story. What did that look like?
Okay. So one day I asked my niece and her fiance where they were getting married, and they had looked at some venues and really hadn't made any progress in that regard. And I said, well, why don't you get married in my backyard? Or maybe I didn't put it like that. I said, well, just to let you know, my backyard is a great place to have a wedding, and if that works for you, then that works for me. So the next day, they called me back and accepted,
Oh my God.
Yeah, so I was making the offer in a serious vein, not expecting them to accept.
And you apologized to your wife after that, right? To
Well,
Kathy?
it's
Yeah.
funny because I made that offer without marital consultation, and but it turned out to be, well, it's not a coincidence that it turned out to be quite what it turned out to be, because what had happened is my wife, after she put the 2x4 down, she said, "Okay, so this is a go, but we're going to have to straighten this place out." So she said she wanted to get it painted, and we got the inside painted. And about a month before the wedding, the painter quit on me.
Wow.
And the outside hadn't been painted, So now
Where the wedding's going to take place.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So so I didn't hesitate. I said, well, the only thing I can do now is just call Kevin Brennan. And
You already knew him.
well, Kevin and I went to high school together. In fact, he was in my wife and my graduating class. And we used to run around back in the day. We worked at a restaurant called the Wine Cellar when we were 16. And we were both knuckleheads at the time, and but we had something in common. Our fathers worked in the same firehouse in Queens, New York, and we became fast friends. They moved to Florida a year after we did, and he became a firefighter as well. And just like most firefighters back in the day, they had another job which they moonlighted at. And Kevin moonlighted as a painter.
Right.
And he developed that business over the years. So, we really, I don't want to say we lost touch, because he was always there and I was always there, but we never really ran in the same circles again. And we'd see each other at a funeral or a wedding occasionally and hug and catch up on the old times and stuff like that. But he became a monumental part of my life. After I called him to rescue me from this dilemma that I had developed regarding my painter, he dropped all of his projects that he was doing at the time, and he came to my rescue to paint the outside of my house.
Wow.
And he finished up within a week of the wedding. And as a side note, my niece and nephew just had, my niece and her husband just had their second child, and it was a fabulous wedding. And as warm and loving and incredible as that story sounds, it's really just a minute development of what really happened that day that really changed my life, because Kevin had become a Christian, and he started ministering to me, and in all the problems that I had because of addiction and lust, I still had a relationship I still thought I had a relationship with God. And, so when he started talking to me, my mentality was, Kevin, I do have some problems that I'd like to fix, but my relationship with the Lord I don't think is one of them, because I really felt maybe not confident in our in the relationship that the Lord and I had, but it was still there. It was still there, and so maybe it was ignorance or denial, one of those two, or maybe a combination of the both, that fooled me into believing that that couldn't be the answer to my problems. It had to be something else. So Kevin and I reconnected and started spending a lot of time together. And within a couple of weeks, we were right back to where we were when we were 16. Other than we were not completely knuckleheads anymore. Kevin was had his life straightened out, and mine appeared to be straightened out because I had gotten so good at making people think that I really had my act together.
Right.
And the longer Kevin and I spoke, the more he realized, wow, Dan, you're a really good actor.
Wow.
Yeah.
So where'd that go from there?
Well, he introduced me to a lot of Christian men. And I'll go right out and say it, that I didn't really let men into my life. Although I made them think that they were part of my life, it was also an act. And that really held me back from the spiritual growth that helped me become a man. I was still a child. I was successful in business. I didn't owe any money to anybody. I lived in a nice home, and I had all the toys, boats, cars, and great vacations, and a loving wife. But spiritually, I was still a juvenile, and I didn't realize it. I didn't know it until I met Kevin. And as time went by, he introduced me to more and more Christian men. I got involved with, I started reading the Bible.
Whoa.
I know,
You're
right?
kidding me.
There was a Bible scripture every Sunday at Mass. But I don't really have any recollection of the priest telling me where it really came from. He would mention the Bible passage and the title of the Bible passage and really where to find it in the Bible, but I was never encouraged to logistically go and look up that verse in the Bible. So when I joined all of Kevin's Christian friends in the Bible studies, I didn't know anything about, who Luke was and Matthew and John and what Revelation meant. And, I kind of knew the New Testament versus the Old Testament, but I couldn't tell you a lot about the difference between both of them. I really didn't even know that the New Testament was the life of Jesus. I didn't even know that. And so that was really the genesis of my rebirth.
So as you like walk on the other side, if you will, what difference per se is reading the Bible making in your life right now?
Well, now that I have been baptized again, the one that I remember, because obviously as a Catholic we're baptized very shortly after birth, and we don't remember that. We have pictures, perhaps. But I got baptized in front of about 1,000 people in church of my own volition. And it was a charismatic experience for me. And I realized at that point that I had really become a child of God. And that really changed everything, because I had been reading the Bible up to that point, and I had become curious, much more curious about the Bible. But when I became baptized, I became a student of the Bible. And now I am a student of the Bible, and I read it and listen to it every day. I go to 3 to 5 Bible studies a week to support my pursuit of becoming a mature Christian, because it's one thing to be baptized and to have a rebirth in your life to where you're following a different map than it is to become a mature Christian. And but even in my infancy as a Christian, I do have the opportunity to have an impact on even mature Christians, because sometimes mature Christians need a jolt of youth, and I can provide that. Just like my 5th grade boys that are Christians and youth, I need that. I need that. And I want that. That's the other big thing, is that I went from letting things happen instead of making things happen. Instead of pushing the cart uphill, I'm pulling the cart downhill, and it doesn't seem like a significant difference. But the difference turns out to be salvation or hell. And I know now, beyond any reasonable doubt, that I have life in the flesh now, which represents a very small portion of my life in eternity with the Lord. But when my days on earth are over, I'm going to spend the rest of my life in heaven. And I'm not ready to go today.
Right.
But I'm ready to go.
Well, so that's one of the things, that look on your face right now. It's one that I look forward to seeing on Tuesday morning. It puts gas in my tank. I see that little boy smiles. I won't call it a smirk, but a joy behind what I don't think is a mask anymore. And to get a Danny Frain hug is amazing. It'll last you at least a week. But I definitely want to come back each week for more. But now can you give us a little idea, maybe a snapshot of what life looks like now since your rebirth, since you ripped that door off the hinges, and how your life is different in a casual walk through your life?
The best real life example that I can give, that some people might be able to associate with, is when during World War II we came ashore on Normandy on June 6th, 1944, and we started infiltrating the towns of France. And the people who had been under the thumb of Hitler and the occupation knew that the pain was over and they were liberated. And Robert, I was able to take the mask off and throw it in the garbage because I had become liberated. And it's a feeling that I want to share with every man for the rest of my life.
So, as you're walking through today, tomorrow, this weekend, next week, does life look different?
The best way I can explain that is, yes, it feels different and it is different. When it really resonates, though, is when I see some friends that I haven't seen in a while and they see me, and then they say something to the effect of, "Wow, Dan, you seem different." It almost seems like the tension has been released a little bit. It almost seems like there's a certain calm that you're experiencing today that I had never seen before. Oh, one of my best friends in life is a fellow named John Stephanie, and I had lunch with him yesterday. Hadn't seen him well, his son passed away about a year ago. I don't think that I've seen him since then. His son Johnny passed on October 19th, and that was a very, very difficult time, obviously, for the Stephanie family, but because I had a loving relationship with the family, it was a very difficult time for me too. But I've known John and the Stephanie family for about 20 years. I was one of their children's soccer coach for about 10 years. And so we had really, really become very, very close. Much more than a coach-player relationship. We became personal friends. And I met him for lunch yesterday, and that's exactly how it went. I sat down, and we hugged each other, and within a couple of minutes, he said, "Dan, you seem different," And as soon as he said it, I knew what he meant because it was what I was feeling. Yeah. It's like when you let the tension off of a wire, it releases, and that's the best way I can explain about being reborn. I am a born-again Christian. The old Dan is gone, and the new Danny is here. And I'm born again, Robert, and I'm thrilled about it. My family is thrilled about it. They can't believe it. And perhaps the one who has recognized it the most is my daughter Danielle, because she was spiritually mature when she was 15.
Oh my.
And I don't even think I've reached that maturity stage that she had when she was 15, and so she sees it in me because she already has that in her heart where it occurs. That's the only place it occurs. It has to begin, and it began in my heart, and now obviously it goes to my mind and out of my mouth, and hopefully into other people that are either unbelievers, partial believers, deniers. God has offered this opportunity to every single human being on earth. Doesn't matter where you came from, what you were taught, how you believe, how good you were, how bad you were. If you're willing to turn your life over to the care of God and you're willing to take the steps necessary to accomplish that, everybody's welcome. So come on down. Come on down, because we'll show you how to do it. We'll explain to you what can happen. And I encourage it to anybody and everybody, because I went, really, and let me just put this into the nuts and the bolts. I went from not caring if I lived or died, even to the level of maybe even hoping I died, to an emotional, personal commitment to Jesus that has allowed me to live my life the way He wants me to. And that happens from being born again. Feels pretty good. Feels pretty good.
And I got to tell you, Danny, you're watching the short time that I've known you relative to the Stephanies and Brennan and all the other people that you've done life with before, and just the slice that I got into watching you grow. I don't know that I've ever seen anyone jump in so fast with so much eagerness, like a little kid at Christmas time under the tree when it's time to unwrap the presents. And for me, you lift me up by being around you. Like, it's something I wish I could hang around you every day, because it's contagious. And you've made my life better because of the way you're living your life. And it adds, I hope this makes sense to you or anybody, is that you add strength to me. You know, you seem, to me, you're another man in my life that is kind of like the bumper rails at the bowling alley. If I get too far over one way or the other, Danny's on one side, there's some other guys on other sides, and it just keeps me in the lane and gives me joy. So thanks for sharing your story. Somebody, think about this. Somebody right now, somewhere, is in that dark room. And maybe they don't even have a glimmer of light. And this message, God's word, never comes back void, never returns void, the word says. It's going to go out and someone's going to hear your story. God is going to use your story. He is using your story. And there's someone out there in that dark room that's going to rip that door off because you were courageous enough to just open your heart and give us a look inside. And I love you dearly. Thanks so much for helping my life, as well as sharing your story here, to take your time and the risk of being vulnerable. And thanks for teaching me what man love looks like, how to be healthy, how to walk by a brother, how to edify other guys' life. Love you dearly. Thanks so much, Dan.
Well, as you know, Robert, I feel exactly the same way about you. We write love letters to us almost every week, you know, on texts, and I want to thank you and Charlie also for this opportunity, because yes, it's good for me to hear myself say these things. Mm-hmm. It is. It really is good. And think about that. It's good for me to hear myself say these things. But it represents a minuscule part of my hope that my words and our words together today are going to have a positive influence on somebody, to drag them off the floor to see the light. And so if I've passed my test today, maybe you'll even give me the opportunity to return and share some more of my story, because I'd really love to.
I think that can be arranged. Yeah.
Amen.
We got the most important vote over there with the gavel. So be it. Okay. I want to just thank you out there for watching, taking the time to listen to Danny's story. There's so many of you out there who have crossed over, and hopefully this was an edification in your own life. And would you please pass this story on to someone? Retweet it, whatever that looks like in your life, in your circle, and come back. Charlie is shaking his head because retweeting so old-fashioned, but that's okay.
Reacts.
Would you all just invest in someone? Tell somebody you love them today. It's not too late. Someone needs to hear it. Someone's living in that dark room. Pass this video on to someone, maybe in a casual text, a link, whatever your mode of communication is. We love you guys out there, and we hope to see you soon. We hope you'll tune back in. Maybe we're going to be telling your story next.
Was I supposed to record that?
I don't know. You want to do it again?
Yeah.
Okay. Which camera?
Thank you for watching. Please share our videos, subscribe to the channel, and click the like button. Paul wrote in 2 Corinthians 4:6, "For God, who commanded the light to shine out of darkness, has shined in our hearts to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ." In Matthew 5:14, Jesus told his followers, "You are the light of the world." Let's be that light.